I just thought that was really, really cool. So thank you for sharing. I think that's an awesome memory. Iceman talked about board games, which I thought was really cool. And, because board games, are, that was not one of the things I think that we focused on at school, although it could have been, right? I mean, there are so many great board games out there that are just awesome. So I think it's great that Iceman was playing board games after school, but not only just playing board games after school, but playing board games after school with video game music. I think that's just awesome, right? And I think we've all done that too, even in D&D sessions that I've had before, where you basically just put on some of your favorite video game music and just kind of have that be the background and the background music for the games you're playing. So I thought that was a really cool story. So thank you for sharing that too, Iceman. I think most of us could say at some point that we probably played some kind of games after school, whether they be electronic board games or whether they be card games or anything like that. Let's see. Let me see here. Sarujisu, I think I said that right. It's talked about playing DDR or other games with the TVs that were hanging on the wall in the halls at school, and kind of getting the tacit teacher approval to be able to do those things and not get in trouble. I thought that was really cool. I could just imagine the teachers finding out about DDR in the halls, and then some of them actually being intrigued. I thought that was really neat, and I probably dating myself too to go back, right? But nobody was hanging any TVs on the wall when I was in school. You'd be lucky to be able to find one anywhere probably, but let alone being able to kind of hijack it and put an alternate input into it would have just been impossible. But I think I just think that's a really cool story. I think that's a great thing, and also fosters that gaming and kind of geeky subculture, which I think is why we're all here and why it's so cool to be gamers. Let's see. DTX 180 talked about just epic games of Risk 2210 AD. And I thought this was cool for several reasons. One, because everything is very programmatic, right? You have to wait for all the people to be in place. You have to set up the game, which is meticulous, and you have to be ready to execute the plan and take your turns quickly in order to make the game flow more easily and more quickly. I think that's awesome, right? Because I think we've all been there. I know when I would go game, at lunchtime, we would always try to set something up beforehand so that once we got there, it was very easy to kind of set up and go, and we didn't have to talk about it a lot. It was just kind of there, and we do something, right? So we get done before the end of gaming, or of gaming period, of lunch. Maybe it should have been called gaming period. But the idea that also that these were epic games that lasted days and days and days, I think is awesome. Marking where every single piece is so that you can continue the game in its exact state as soon as you sit down for lunch period next time. That was an awesome story, and I thought that was great. I definitely had experiences like that as well, although we weren't playing board games, but some of the kind of marathon sessions, it was one of the best parts of the day. When you start thinking about playing, like for example, for us it was D&D. We would look forward to getting to lunch to where we could just continue the story, and then we'd go to the next thing, and that would be that. Really cool story. Thanks for sharing that. And Prangerade, as is, I guess we have grown accustomed to with Prangerade, really shuffles the deck. Bad pun. Talking about, of course, playing with the Classic 52, the classic card decks of yore. Busting out with a couple interesting games, including ERS, Egyptian Rat Screw, which I was never a huge fan of, but Rue was quite the Egyptian Rat Screw player back in college. I remember that very, very well. But in any case, I love classic card games, specifically ones with teams. I love playing like Hearts, Hearts is not teams, but I love playing Hearts with a group, or playing Spades, things like that. I love those kinds of games, and I think it's, you know, it's cool. I love the story too, where they're just walking by all the Magic people and all the D&D people, you know, just like they freaking own the place, and then sit down and you know, pop out a deck of 52 cards, right? I just think that's awesome. You know, that's one of those things you see in like high school movies. You know, I could just see Ferris Bueller like doing that exact kind of a thing. So anyway, thanks for sharing that, Prangerade, and thank you to all of you for sharing your memories with us all, because I think that's what makes the Weekly Ringer so great, is you guys' input and really being able to talk through some of those stories of when you were younger. Now, you guys ready to hear story time with the Commodore? You know, there are several things to talk about. Look, before I forget, I want to talk about the band period one for Mr. K. You know, because I just thought of this. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I thought about it when I was talking about the Mr. K's contribution. There are several times. This didn't just happen in band, but it happened mostly in band, because I was also in band in high school, and before that as well. But whenever there would be a free day period, it would almost always consist of watching a movie that was either somehow relevant or could loosely be tied in somehow. Whatever, right? If you're, you know, studying, you know, paleontology, the movie would be Jurassic Park. You know, if you were, you guys get the picture, right? You tie it in loosely to whatever you were doing. What was interesting about that is that whenever there would be a movie that would go on during that free period, my friends and I would never play. I'm sorry, we would never sit down and watch. We would always just bring our cards, you know, whatever it was, Magic, Star Trek, CCG, Star Wars, CCG, and we would just kind of go into our own little corner and play games, and which was actually a whole lot of fun. And as I recall, a lot of really great memories as well. And it's funny, this is all just coming back to me now because of Mr. K's story. But I remember very, very fondly also being there, you know, where we would just have our own little corner and no one else would be there. But, you know, by the time we all started having girlfriends, it would be kind of those awkward things where they would just kind of sit there and kind of watch and not know what the hell was going on and like start paying attention to the movie. And anyway, those were fun times, I have to say. So you want to talk about the geeky folks in the corner? That was Rue and myself and a few other folks. We would just sit in the corner and play card games and do whatever we were doing, rather than even watch the movie with the rest of the folks. That's how geeky we were. It just came to me when you were talking about when we were talking about Mr. K. So, what else? You know, I mean, there were a lot of awesome gaming traditions at school that we went into. You know, just talk of video games really got me going at a young age. I was really into that stuff. And when I was just completely a geek and just was so, like, you know, out there and marginalized for being a geek back in elementary school, you know, I always used to get together with people and talk about, like, Mortal Kombat and talk about Street Fighter, how awesome those games were and how much I wanted to play them, even if I didn't own them. I had, like, magazines, and I'd go to the arcades and I'd see them all. But in any case, there was that. But I would also say, too, that where things really kicked off was two things, really. I saw Star Wars, and some of you might think badly of me, or my parents, to hear this, but I saw Star Wars at kind of a later age. I think the first time I saw Star Wars was either in the seventh grade or the 8th grade, one of those two. And so, but obviously Rue and all of my other friends had seen it many times by that point. So it was very new to me, and it was obviously very magical for me. The first time I had seen it, I was really, really into it. And we had found out that there was a customizable card game for Star Wars. And this was after we had found out that Rue actually had gotten into playing, not playing, but he had, this takes dedication, had not only bought a tremendous number of these cards, but knew how to play, even though I don't think he had ever played with anyone ever. Had a ton of Star Trek customizable card game cards. He had them all, but he didn't have anybody to play with, so he just had a bunch of cards and didn't know. And once he met us, you know, the process sped up a little bit, and I remember buying them, some of them, at like a a garage sale just to be able to play. And I remember there were some really good cards in it too. And I went and played, and that kicked off the entire phenomenon of customizable card games with Rue and our friends with that. And that just got the ball rolling. But Star Trek, which was always, you know, my favorite back in the day, turned into this love of Star Wars. And then when things really ignited was when I went with my friend. We took a specific trip because we had seen this box in Walmart on the wall where you could buy this box that started your capability to play Star Wars customizable card game. We bought it. We started playing. We got really into it. That game, as some of you have seen from the video of Rue and I playing that game, is absolutely overwhelmingly difficult to learn and to master, and the rules are just draconic and long. But it got us into customizable card games to the edge, to where we got fully invested in Star Trek CCG, and we also then started buying Magic cards. We got into L5R. We got into all these other card games, and they were just so much damn fun. And at that point, the floodgates were open. We played any time during the day that we could get a game in. Played during those free period days. Played during lunch. Played after school. Played when we got together on the weekends. Like, just played like mad. And it was just incredible fun. You guys remember, what it's like to be a kid, to just be sitting there playing Magic, say, you know what, I think why don't we just finish this game and then we'll start playing Mario Kart. That was kind of how we did it. We just floated to each one of them. But that really got everything going. And then I remember the very first game of D&D I ever played was actually during lunch period in high school. And I have to say, it was not very fun. I didn't know what the hell was going on. But I still played the archetype of character that I probably have played the most in D&D, and I'll leave you all to figure out which that is. But in any case, learned a lot, really enjoyed the game, just never really picked it back up. It was second edition at that point. It was or I guess AD&D, right? And then we went into third edition, and we really got into that when we got into college, and that just kept going and going and going. And D&D is still a part of things. I mean, I definitely I'm not on top of it as much as I was, but still enjoy that kind of stuff. So anyway, we definitely found time to play during, before, after. Whenever we could catch a game at school, it was always there. And I'm glad to hear that I'm not alone in that, because all of you, or most of you, had the same kind of a sentiment. And for those of you that played a lot of video games at school, I didn't do that, but I will end with one story. And that is that, and I'm not proud of this, so kids, pay attention. But I had actually gone in, I did a lot of technology stuff back then too. I went and actually had gotten a cracker hack that you could actually load onto the PC, to the Macs at school, and break into at-ease, which was supposed to lock the computer down. But I figured out a way to boot to a floppy that would circumvent that process. And so I could get into the root directories, and I could actually get behind and put my own files in, so on and so forth. Well, I started at that point. Also, I was on the internet at that particular point in time, so I was able to go out and download a bunch of things like emulators. And so, but at the time, SNES9X for Mac actually didn't allow you to save. So I started Final Fantasy IV literally probably 20 times on those PCs back in the day. Right when I was done with my computer math homework for the day, I would actually just jump into a game of Final Fantasy IV, whatever I wanted to play on the Super Nintendo at that point. At that point, it was really just a proof of concept. Someone got in major trouble for that. Not for specifically, and I luckily didn't get into trouble for it, but someone got in major trouble for that. Don't tell anybody. Anyway, so I thought you guys would like that story too. I definitely got my video gaming in while I was at school as well, and no harm, no foul, in my opinion. All right, so yeah, thanks for taking the trip down nostalgia and memory lane with me. This was a great experience. I love asking questions where you guys talk about your lives, and love hearing about what kind of stories you all have, because it really helps the community really come together in awesome ways. So thank you all. And now we're going to move to next week's question. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have been watching a lot of TV lately, maybe basketball or with the NCAA tournament, so on and so forth, but there's been one commercial in particular that really got me going. I mean, obviously you've seen some of the Mass Effect commercials. They look pretty cool. But there is a new commercial out. It's getting a lot of airplay for Assassin's Creed 3. It's basically got a kind of a plain vanilla trailer for Assassin's Creed 3, and it is interesting to say the least. Now, before I tell you exactly why I want to ask this question and get into my real answer for it,